Today is Tuesday, the 12th of September, 2017. Would you like an initial block download and reindexing up to 40% faster with 20% less memory? Well, today you can have it. It's Bitcoin 0.15. It has been tagged for release. The binaries aren't out yet. And now I get to do Bitcoin Clee, get blockchain info. What block height is it? I can just read the headers. The header, 484,736. And this is what you're looking at right here, is the Dragon's Den server I purchased today. It's running Debian stable. It's got two Intel Xeon quad cores. It's got 2 terabytes of storage, 16 gigabytes of ECC RAM. It's pretty nippy, actually. We're just syncing the blockchain right now, as you can see. It's just running Bitcoin right now. I've just not really done very much with it. We're up to block height 383,000. Great block. Love that. Love that block. It's going to get a bit slower now with all the P2SH scripts that were going on. Also got my table of processes running, just making sure there are no crashes. All seems to be going well so far. How are you? You feeling well? Thanks a lot for joining us. This has been so good. We got a lot of views on Friday. Don't know where they all came from, but thanks very much. Really appreciate some of the chat that was going on. And today, I think we're going to start with the story of the day, which is really this new version of Bitcoin Core that has been released, that patches a much hyped and overrated vulnerability, in my opinion. It was released by Christopher Jeffrey. I mean, it was announced sort of to a lot of fanfare at the Breaking Bitcoin conference over the weekend. But really, it was just to do with the fact that a user was able to spam or DOS the UTXO set, creating a CPU overhead. And as put out today in the release notes of 0.15, that is now fixed. This change now avoids the CPU overhead of deserializing and serializing the unused outputs, has more predictable memory usage, uses simpler code, is adaptable to various future cache flushing strategies. And as I quoted at the beginning, we get much faster download. I've experienced that myself, both on the Raspberry Pi 3 and also on this server that I purchased. Earlier versions experienced a spike in memory usage whilst flushing the UTXO updates to disk as a result of only half the memory being available for cache, and that's been fixed. We got improvements to signature validation, and the level DB has been upgraded. SHA-256 hashing has been optimized for architecture, and so on and so forth. So right now, you can't actually download this. If you go to the Bitcoin Core website, only 0.14.2 is available. And that's because the binaries aren't out yet. That takes time. People have to test. They have to compile, and they have to sign those binaries before uploading. But you can right now go to Bitcoin Core, the Git repo, and you can compile it yourself if you know how to. My panelists today, Charlene and Joe, what'd you make of it? Happy?
Well, as far as Chris bringing that out and breaking Bitcoin, I don't know. I felt it was not the wisest choice, given the fact that he had told them, the organizers, prior to giving the speech, that he wouldn't do that specifically. And I mean, whatever you think about whether the vulnerability should be out, I'm not really cool with people just lying to people and taking over someone else's conference like that.
Yeah, well, we have a link so you can see it yourself in the description below. You can seek straight to the time when Chris gives his talk, and you can decide for yourself. We also have a link to Elizabeth Stark, who made a comment on the Slack channel. I believe Bashko uploaded a screen capture of that to Twitter, and that's been cited elsewhere on the Git repo. So you can see it all for yourself, but I can vouch firsthand, having compiled it today on the server that I just showed you. It is very, very quick. I really like it, and I've also got it running on a Raspberry Pi 3 as well, and it's pretty nippy on that. You do pay a slight penalty, I should just add, that you do end up, your database, your chain state data, I believe, ends up a little bit bigger than it used to before. So just with that caveat in mind. But another controversial thing about this release is also that it could potentially kick off a lot of the SegWit2x nodes. Anyone? Well, Shinobi isn't here today. He couldn't be here. He's busy But if he were here, I'm sure he'd have a lot to say about that. But we can talk more about that tomorrow, as I'm sure that story will unfold. Let's move on to Switzerland, because the title of today's show is that we don't all get to be Switzerland. Dante's Inferno, of which many of you have been following me, know that I'm a big fan of the comedy. He didn't actually reserve a space in the Inferno for the people who just sat on the fence. But the inner circle of hell, the sin of pride, people who would celebrate their achievements and believe that it was entirely down to them, who would lavish in all the views and the hits, the clicks and the likes. Well, their big sin wasn't so much that they did evil. You see, in order to tell a lie has to know what the truth is in order to tell the lie. A bullshitter, on the other hand, doesn't care what the truth is, just says whatever they have to say to get their petty needs met. In fact, Satan in Dante's Inferno was a really, really intelligent guy. I mean, he had 3 heads. He presumably had a lot of brain power, but he was incredibly greedy. There was a real stupidity to the evilness. The reason why all of the sins in the outer circles of hell were allowed to be committed is because those in the inner circle lacked the capacity to care. They just didn't care that all this shit was going on. So not so much that people would sit on the fence, but that people didn't care when evil things were being committed. And I don't think that accurately describes Switzerland. Janine, was that a good segue?
Yeah, Switzerland is definitely not sitting on the fence, because they're actually being very public about their support for cryptocurrencies. So this is one of the stories that came out a few days ago, that if you don't know anything about Switzerland, it's made up of 26 what are called cantons or sovereign member states, which together form the Swiss Confederation, what we know as Switzerland. And the capital canton is called Zug, and it's located in central Switzerland. It's been particularly active in recent years with inviting a lot of startups to either relocate or establish roots there relating to cryptocurrencies. And so it's become a really cryptocurrency-friendly area. And they've now started calling it Crypto Valley. And this activity has generated a lot of interest from other cantons in Switzerland who want to also attract these kinds of companies and investment. And one of those other interested cantons is called Ticino, or Ticino. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but in German it's actually Tessen. And that's a canton in southern Switzerland. And that's the subject of this story in particular, because there's a municipality there called Chicasso. I'm not sure how to pronounce any of these places, but it was basically they're trying to distinguish themselves as another crypto valley, except they're calling themselves Cryptopolis. And they reportedly recently announced that they would start accepting up to 250 Swiss francs in Bitcoin, which is about the equivalent of 265 US dollars, for tax payments starting in 2018. So they're not accepting all taxes in Bitcoin, but they're saying you can pay up to 250 or 265 Swiss francs of your tax bill in Bitcoin. Now, you may be thinking there's no way that anyone's going to be paying their taxes in Bitcoin, but actually the reason that they're doing it is because Zug has actually already been accepting up to 200 Swiss francs in Bitcoin for taxes since last year, and they report that they've received they've received payments in Bitcoin for taxes at least 40 times since then, and that's actually higher than anticipated. So yeah, I thought that was really cool, because, you know, we've been hearing all this FUD about China recently, and people are wondering what's going to happen if China bans Bitcoin. But then on the other side, you have countries like Switzerland that are going in the opposite direction, and they're like, bring your Bitcoins to us.
Well, another reason why it's important that people are able to pay their taxes in Bitcoin is because countries use the fact that citizens, millions of their citizens, need to be able to hold the national currency in reserve so that they can pay their taxes at the end of the financial year. Because if all of those citizens didn't have to do that, this huge $5 trillion a day FX market where people can trade all of these currencies all over the world, well, they've got to speculate. And they're speculating on the fact that all these taxpayers are going to need to be hoarding these scam coins, these nationalized scam coins, so that they can pay their taxes. So I do think it's important, because the more that businesses are able to hold Bitcoin so that they can actually pay for bills and utilities and, you know, staffing, then the more Bitcoin can finally become, you know, an acceptable form of currency, rather than just something that you play with and it's a toy, but actually all anyone really wants is fiat. You know, they just use the Bitcoin as a go-between, and it's kind of a novelty. So I do think this is an important first step, but not very many Bitcoins they're accepting. 250, 260 odd francs, which is pretty low.
Have either of you heard what they plan on doing with the collected cryptocurrencies?
Please tell.
No, I haven't. I was interested. I've read a couple articles, but I wonder, are they going to...
Well, I think they'll be hoarding them. I mean, if it's Switzerland, I think they're pretty smart. They've got a lot of vaults up there in the mountains with gold and so on. So I think they will be, I think they'll be storing them. That's what my money would be on.
I guess that makes sense with the limit as well. They're basically building in a investment plan.
Well, they're not going to go to war with it, are they? And then it's not exactly a large landmass they've got to spend on all those public services they have and all those roads. So it's fairly cheap to run as a country. It's basically a giant PO box, a big international PO box where you can set up a bank account. You could even buy residency there. So I hear. But let's move on to another country in the world. Let's talk about, we're just going to peddle this rumor mill. I think that's what we should do. I think we should add fuel to the fire and add more FUD and more uncertainty to this rolling, trundling story that is Bitcoin bans China. Does Bitcoin ban China?
Well, we've because this is an article from the Wall Street Journal, and in the past several hours, people have been trying to figure out whether the headline matches what is presented in the article. And Tim Pastor did a really good tweet about it, where he highlighted a bunch of portions of the article where they basically, their sources are they seem to be not, it's not very clear reading the article who those sources are. They seem to cite analysts a lot. They seem to cite regulators, but they don't say where the regulators are from or what their position is. And there's even a quote right near the top where it says they asked the People's Bank of China for comment and they didn't respond. So that's kind of interesting, because this is really the only significant article to come out in the last few days, which specifically talks about China wanting to ban exchanges, or domestic exchanges to be specific, because all of the other articles that have been coming out over the last 2 weeks have mostly been about them saying that they want to ban ICOs, or specifically fundraising using ICOs. But even that statement is backtracking a little bit, because we also have other sources saying that they're not going to ban the ICOs permanently. They're just going to ban them temporarily until they establish a system of licensing for them.
Okay. So it's just more FUD on top of more FUD on top of more FUD. And like maybe there might be some like small exchanges that may temporarily be suspended depending on their personal circumstances. But Bitcoin hasn't banned China as far as we're aware right now. Bitcoin is still allowing China to operate. And so you don't have to panic sell.
And it doesn't seem like, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the biggest red flag about all of this is that none of the exchanges have really said whether they've even been notified about it. So I think that that's kind of what everyone's waiting for as a definitive answer to whether exchanges are getting banned or not.
Okay, what were your thoughts?
Well, it's sort of separate, so I was going to let it go. But I mean, the price, a little price talk moment, but holding at 4,200, you know, I haven't been in this space that long, but even this seems very high to me. So the fact that it's staying this high even through the FUD is probably a good sign.
Yeah, let me just pull up a chart in 1 sec. Okay, so here we go. Got Crypto Watch on the go. Let's get rid of the walls. Yeah, I mean, I think I think it is. Obviously, it's very toppy. Like if we go out to the daily, I mean, the 3-day isn't looking too good. You know, daily MACD is red, and so on. And a lot of people, like in the whale pool chat and some of the other trading communities, have been talking doom and saying like how we're going to pull back to, you know, 3,600 or maybe 2,800. But like, I don't think that that's because of the news. I think people use the news and the narrative as an excuse to do what they want to do. But sometimes the price just does what it does because we reach technical level, like we bounced off of 5,000 and then people decided that actually this was too expensive and they've got bids a lot lower down. So I think that's fair enough. But yeah, I don't want to go on too much about the price on this show. I do want to just remind everybody that if you do want to download the actual code of Bitcoin, you can go to github.com/Bitcoin/Bitcoin, and you can just look up the tag, go under click here where it talks about branches and tags, and then go 0.15.0. And that's where you can download it from. And you can also go to my full node repo. I'll put a description, put a link to that in the description below. What's the chat saying? What are the trolls up to? Hey James, yes, I love you too.
Yeah, so Andreas made a good comment about, you know, all this news about China and how it's affecting the price. And he said a really good thing, that it actually makes more sense for the price to go up if Bitcoin does get banned, because obviously the demand hasn't gone away, but the supply might go away. It might be harder to get it. So if the price is going to go in any direction, it would probably be up. I'm just saying. And I also want to make a comparison to what's happened recently, because we were recently in Berlin, and I'm just going to call him Fake Satoshi, made a comment on Twitter about how Berlin, the number of shops in Berlin that have been taking Bitcoin has gone down since 2014, and he attributes that to an increase in transaction fees. But that's not really accurate, because one of the biggest things that's affected Bitcoin adoption in Germany is that local Bitcoins got banned at the end of 2014. And that hasn't changed since. And that's one of the major reasons that gone down, is because Germany is a very cash-based society. And so if, you know, most people are operating based on cash and then they can't buy directly into Bitcoin using cash, then that's going to be a big hindrance to them. But despite that, you know, we were in Germany, and actually within a 2-mile radius, we found 2 cafes that took Bitcoin, and they actually like SegWit a lot. If you want to bring up those, because you took a picture of the coasters that we found at the cafe.
That was yeah, that was room 77, actually. I can pull it up. It was on my Twitter. And I really like the guys. If you ever go to Berlin, you should definitely check out room 77. It's actually a bar, but it has an amazing chef. The food is fantastic. And I highly recommend it. And of course, they take Bitcoin, and it was really, really smooth and simple. And no, it doesn't get processed through BitPay. That was the other thing. Like, we went to another cafe, and there was actually a couple of places, and you weren't really paying in Bitcoin. You were basically just paying BitPay, which I found very annoying. But yeah, I'll pull up the image. Hang on a sec. Bang. There it is. That's the coaster in room 77. And that's, yeah, great bar, Berlin. Highly recommend you check it out. Okay, so we got a question in the chat, which is, how would one approach hacking the Trezor wallet to work with your own full node? You can actually get it to work because it's just a Python library. A couple of users that I sent the full nodes to a couple of years ago got them working. They sent me screen grabs. I kind of got halfway through and then I stopped because I got sidetracked and I had to do other things. But I do believe it is possible. And if you can't figure it out by Googling it or by using DuckDuckGo, just ping me on Twitter and I'll get back to investigating it. Also, the other thing is I would highly recommend that there's a lot of Raspberry Pi 2s still hanging around. And I would actually recommend that people set those up without any network connection, without any kind of devices attached, because the old Raspberry Pi 2 didn't come with a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. So you could actually have that as an air-gapped wallet. You could actually generate your keys, store them on there, or have stuff backed up and encrypted and things. So I also, pro tip, I think that's also a good low-cost solution. But yeah, if you do have a Trezor Ledger wallet as well as another hardware wallet provider, they're very good. But do bear in mind that these technologies are still very nascent and they still might yet be subject to hacking that we don't know about. There might be a user vulnerability in there in the actual user flow, in the way that you are instructed to fill out your mnemonic, for example, if you have to type it out on a keyboard, or what if there is a somebody logging all your keystrokes. So Mr. Hoddle is in the chat. Dude, you need to get on here. Come on, get on here. He says, so Trezor, green address, and then your node. Well, yeah, you can. You can use the Trezor also with Electrum wallet as well, which also gives you some additional security. But anytime that you type into your computer, even if the internet's disabled or you log into a guest account, theoretically, you could still have a remote access Trojan and you could still, get owned or pwned that way. So personally, I really like the Ledger Blue. The new ones aren't coming out until after October now. I think October 31st is the official release date. So if you go over to the Ledger website and purchase those, you will have to wait some time. The reason I prefer it though, guys, is because you actually get to type the mnemonic into its own little keyboard, its own touchscreen. It's like a little smartphone. It's about, about 75% the size of an iPhone 7. And so it's quite cozy, quite small. It's a little bit fumbly with the keys, but for the extra security, I highly recommend it. And they're bringing out the new one end of October, as I say, and I believe it will have Bluetooth as well, and it'll be a little bit sturdier than the old one. The battery life, I hope that will be a bit better than the initial batch that they sent out before. So, guys, final thoughts? Anything else to add? It's been short and sweet today. We're missing Shinobi. He's in South Dakota right now. Apparently, that's not where he lives, though, for those of you who want to dox him. Such an eloquent pwned. Thank you. I know, I try very hard. Shanine, any final thoughts?
Well, I also, since we're talking about, countries that are starting to accept Bitcoin more, I also wanted to mention this paper from Finland's central bank. So it was a research paper published a few days ago on the 5th of September from Bank of Finland. Not official, it wasn't an official statement by them. It was just a research group there. And it's called The Monopoly Without a Monopolist, an economic analysis of the Bitcoin payment system. Now, I have read through most of the paper. I'm not quite sure if their use of the word monopoly is correct. They basically say that Bitcoin is a monopoly in terms of the protocol, like an algorithmic monopoly, instead of being like an organizational monopoly. I guess you could say that the Bitcoin blockchain has a monopoly as a payment system on Bitcoin, the currency, but again, it just seems like a weird use of the term. But anyway, obviously Bitcoin isn't the only cryptocurrency in the ecosystem, so I thought that the use of the word monopoly was a bit weird. They also suggest in the paper that to solve congestion on the network, there should be fixed transaction fees and a block size increase, and that block times should be changed to every minute instead of every 10 minutes. So they make a bunch of suggestions based on the research that they do, or the research that they present in the paper. There's also a section in it where they talk about how proof of work mining is wasteful, which if you look at our presentation that we did recently in Berlin, I presented arguments on why that's not exactly true. I still think, regardless, that the paper is a good sign in terms of how the Finnish government is taking a stance on Bitcoin, especially because the paper ends with the following paragraph. They say, Bitcoin is not regulated. It cannot be regulated. There's no need to regulate it because as a system, it is committed to the protocol as is, and the transaction fees it charges the users are determined by the users independently of the miners' efforts. Bitcoin's design as an economic system is revolutionary and therefore would merit an economist's attention and scrutiny, even if it had not been functional. Its apparent functionality and usefulness should encourage this marvelous structure. So that's pretty, positive, flowery language about Bitcoin. So I thought that was a pretty good sign because we haven't actually heard that much out of Finland. I think they did have a conference recently regarding blockchain technology, but they really haven't been very vocal about it. So I think this paper is a good sign in that direction.
That's not bad for a status bank. Is that like the central bank of Finland?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Very impressive. I like that. That was a good quote. Is that in the description below, or do you want to add that right after the show so people can go read it?
Yeah, I think it should have been in the description. I can add it later.
Joe, any final thoughts?
No, not really. I mean, definitely thanks for letting me come on, and apologies for not having more to say, but that's about it.
No, I'm sure you have lots to say, my friend. I'm sure. I mean, we really appreciate you in the chat. And as I've said, I think we want to get more people from the Mumble chat room to come on air with us and share their views. You might notice there aren't very many people that want to put their face to camera, and that's okay. I think the internet is full of people that want to have something they want to say, that want to share and want to contribute something to this project that we're all working on. So I don't think it's contingent necessarily on people having cameras or having fancy 4K, setups with Shure mics. The Shure mic.
I can't say I've enjoyed being in the Mumble. It's nice to actually get to talk to people about these things. In the town that I live in, it's not all that popular, this topic. So it's kind of cool to find a place to hang out with people and discuss it.
Yeah, it really is. But this is a really good quality microphone. I mean, a really good quality microphone.
You're blowing my mind with that.
I know, aren't I? It's such a good quality microphone. Let's talk for an hour about how good quality this microphone is. All right.
It is gold.
All right. I'm being flippant and facetious. I need to stop. But wait, this is our channel. I'm in control here. I can say what the fuck I want and I have to answer to anybody. It's just how I like it. Right. So those of you who weren't clear, because I've had a couple of tweets and then a DM. So yes, you can update. This is not the same bug as the UPnP bug that was in before. That's been patched. That's all good. This bug was to do with a theoretical attack that was already found by Peter Wuller, and I think it was already being patched. And then this Christopher Jeffrey guy went off and talked about it anyway, but that was 2 months after he first discussed it with Core. It kind of been spoken about on, I think, the issues section of the Git repo. So it wasn't exactly a secret. It was kind of an open secret. But basically, you recreate lots of huge transactions with small outputs, and then basically in the block validation comes about has a huge CPU overhead because it has to process all of this, and that can sometimes make nodes kind of fall over or stall or crash. And it's basically a DOS attempt, denial of service. So go install 0.15. If you don't know how to compile, you're like, help, I'm a civilian. I don't know how to go into the command line and type texts out. It's okay. It will be available for binary download very soon, but you should make an effort to educate yourself. And you can do that by watching this channel with us. We'll do our best to help you. Thank you to all of you lovely trolls in the troll box. Thank you very much for your time. And where is drunk Theo? I mean, he's too sober. He came on, he wanted to come on, but I said, dude, do a breathalyzer, and it came back. It was just green. I'm like, you're not drunk enough. You're not drunk enough, man. Look, if you like this show, you can hit the like button, you can hit the subscribe button. If you don't like it, don't do either of those things. In fact, unsubscribe and dislike the damn video if you want. See you tomorrow, guys. Bye-bye for now.